Okay, so this is a very simple little experiment you can do with your students to demonstrate the concept of solubility. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a tablespoon of sugar and a tablespoon of salt. Here I've got a tablespoon of salt, and we're going to add that to half a cup of water. So we tip that into the glass and we basically give it a stir, and we keep stirring it until all of it's dissolved. So obviously the goal here, what we're going to do is time how long it takes for all of the salt to dissolve. So students might want to use a stopwatch, or use, most students will have a timer on their phone. Now to check whether it's all dissolved, lift up the glass, and if you look at the bottom, if there are granules that are still sinking or collecting at the bottom, then it hasn't all dissolved, so it needs to be stirred for a little bit longer. So timing how long it takes to dissolve, it's a good opportunity to talk about what would make it a fair comparison, a fair test. So that's a really key idea in science. So, making sure you stir them both at the same kind of rate, making sure both cups are the same size, making sure both cups or glasses have the same amount of water, keeping all of those factors the same so that it's a fair comparison. The only thing that should be different is that we're using sugar for one and salt for the other. So in this case we're doing salt first. So what you should find is if you do this, eventually you'll get all the salt to dissolve, and we'll do sugar in a second, but you'll find that the salt actually takes longer to dissolve than the sugar. So we say that sugar is less soluble, the salt is less soluble. So solubility is that idea of how well something dissolves. Something that is more soluble will dissolve more quickly. And that also normally means you can dissolve more of it into a liquid. So you can see here I'm mixing sugar into the water, and it took a lot less time than it took to to dissolve the salt. So here you're doing an experiment to get students to compare how long it takes for each substance to dissolve, but you could also then follow it by looking at how much of each substance could be dissolved in half a cup, or you may even want to do a quarter cup of water, as you might be surprised at how much sugar and salt can actually be dissolved into half a quarter cup of water. If you want to look at that, you just keep adding more until eventually, no matter how much you stir it, it doesn't dissolve anymore. It starts to collect at the bottom. So dissolving is really, get the students to talk about what happens when a substance dissolves, and really what's happening is, some students will think that the substance is disappearing, and that's where you can challenge that kind of misconception by asking them, dip your finger in each solution and taste them. Well, the one where you've added sugar is going to taste sweet, the one where you've added salt tastes salty. So obviously the substance is still there, it hasn't disappeared completely, but what's essentially happened is the particles, the small little bits that it's made out of, have become dispersed. They've separated and they're now spread throughout the liquid. And the resulting mixture of that, that has those particles dissolved in it, is called a solution. So we call the liquid that does the dissolving is called the solvent, and the solid that's being dissolved is called the solute, and together they make up a mixture called a solution.